By Thanksgiving morning, my daughter-in-law had already told 30 guests I was too unwell to come. What she didn't tell them was that she had banned me from the table days earlier. Then just before lunch, my son called me in a panic, and suddenly they needed the woman they had thrown away. The checkbook stayed open on the wooden kitchen counter right beside my freshly brewed mug of black coffee. Camille did not look at the warm kitchen around her. Her focus was entirely locked on the blank ledger line. She had driven across town on a Tuesday morning with a spreadsheet printed on glossy stock, insisting that hosting Thanksgiving this year required an upgraded outdoor patio set. "It comes to $3,000, Loretta," she said, tapping her French manicured finger against the paper. "If our family is hosting 40 people, we need professional staging. Grant agrees that it is an investment in our neighborhood standing." I glanced toward the living room archway. Grant stood by the bookcase, carefully studying his phone screen as if an urgent corporate email required his complete attention. He did not look up. He had spent 10 years working as an estimator for commercial builds, yet he pretended basic math was invisible when his wife demanded subsidies. "I have already contributed the turkeys and the bakery orders, Camille," I answered evenly, sliding the checkbook back into the drawer. "My pension covers my living expenses and my modest savings. I will not finance new patio furniture." Camille pulled her posture straight, her eyes narrowing with cold certainty. "Then do not expect a seat at our table. If you cannot support the effort it takes to bring this family together, you have no place in our celebration. You will sit here alone until you realize what family actually means." She grabbed her designer leather tote, waiting for the familiar tremor in my voice, or the hurried offer to compromise. I looked her in the eye without blinking. I picked up my coffee mug, walked past her to the sink, and rinsed a single spoon under the tap. I did not raise my voice, argue, or ask Grant to defend me. For 3 years, small concessions had slowly turned into unspoken obligations. It started shortly after my husband Arthur passed away, when Grant suggested that family dinners would run smoother if I helped cover incidental hosting costs. What began as contributing artisanal pies gradually expanded into renting warming trays, paying for professional driveway snow removal, and funding elaborate centerpieces that Camille showcased online. Every holiday followed an identical script. Camille presented an invoice disguised as a shared project. Grant remained strategically silent, and my presence was subtly treated as a privilege purchased through cooperation. If I hesitated, comments about my quiet house and solitary retirement were dropped into casual conversation. They assumed that a 64-year-old retired municipal clerk feared an empty dining room more than financial manipulation. On Wednesday morning, I sat at my desk and reviewed my bank statements from the previous 2 years. The numbers painted an undeniable pattern. Over $9,000 had quietly flowed into boutique caterers, private preschool auction donations. Camille organized in my name and seasonal rentals. I was not being invited as a beloved grandmother. I was functioning as an uncredited private guarantor for an image they could not maintain on Grant's salary alone. At noon, my 9-year-old granddaughter Maya called from her tablet during her lunch break. "Grandma, are we still making the spiced cranberry preserves on Friday?" "Not this week, sweetheart," I replied gently, keeping my tone light and cheerful. "Your mother has very busy plans for the kitchen this weekend, so we will reschedule our baking." "Mom said you were taking a break because you were stubborn," Maya whispered innocently before hanging up. I set the phone on its cradle. Camille was already laying the social groundwork, betting that my attachment to Maya would break my resolve before the weekend arrived. She genuinely believed my social world began and ended at her front door. On Thursday morning, I did not drive past the local farmer's market to pick up the heritage squashes Camille had pre-ordered under my account. Instead, I drove directly to the community center on Elm Street. For years, the coordinator had asked if I would teach the weekly afternoon bookkeeping clinic for small business owners, an offer I had routinely declined to keep my Thursdays open for Camille's last-minute errands. I walked into the administrative office, signed the instructor agreement, and collected the curriculum binder. My calendar, once left open to accommodate sudden requests to babysit or run across town for dry cleaning, was now booked every Tuesday and Thursday through the spring. At 4 o'clock, my phone chimed on the console. It was a text from Camille with a picture of a commercial chafing dish. "Need you to pick this up before 5. The supplier is near your neighborhood." I waited 10 minutes, allowing my reply to be simple and devoid of emotional charge. "I am currently occupied with a work assignment at the center and cannot make that trip." Within 3 minutes, Grant called. His voice carried the strained exasperation of a man whose evening routine was suddenly disrupted. "Mom, Camille is stressed out. The chafing dishes are essential for the catering flow. You usually handle the pickup on your way home." "I took on a teaching schedule at the Civic Center, Grant," I said, calmly placing my notes into my leather satchel. "My afternoons are no longer open for unscheduled errands." "Are you still doing this over the 3,000? He asked, lowering his voice. "Just send half, Mom. Come to dinner, apologize for the friction, and we can move past this whole mess." "I will not be sending money, and I will not apologize for my schedule," I stated clearly and ended the call. On Friday morning, I visited the neighborhood hardware store to purchase winterizing supplies for my garden beds. While checking out, the owner, Dave, greeted me warmly. "Loretta, your son called yesterday, asking if we still had that commercial outdoor heater rental on your credit account. I told him we needed your signature first." "Thank you for checking, Dave," I replied steadily. "Please remove my account authorization for any rentals this season. If Grant needs equipment, he will open his own account." Dave nodded without asking intrusive questions, crossing my name off the authorized billing log. Leaving the store, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. For half a decade, my credit lines and merchant accounts had served as an invisible buffer for their upscale lifestyle. Whenever Camille wanted to impress her social circle, my established accounts absorbed the initial deposits. I spent the afternoon raking maple leaves in the front yard, feeling the crisp November air fill my lungs. Across the street, my longtime neighbor Evelyn leaned against the low stone wall with a thermos of hot cider. Evelyn was a retired high school principal who had spent decades managing difficult personalities with steady grace. "I noticed you aren't loading your car with folding chairs this year," Evelyn remarked, offering me a steaming cup. "I am scaling back my commitments," I told her, taking a sip. It turns out my presence was tied to an admission fee. Evelyn watched me carefully, nodding with practical understanding. "People only treat you like a vendor if you keep delivering the goods for free, Loretta. The moment you close the store, you find out who actually values the company." Her words anchored my resolve. Later that evening, I logged into my home utilities portal and removed the automatic payment method tied to the supplementary mobile plan Grant had kept linked to my household account for 8 years. The notification arrived on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. Grant's cellular provider had sent an automated alert indicating that his family's primary data line required an updated payment method. 5 minutes later, my doorbell rang with sharp, rhythmic insistence. I wiped my hands on an apron and opened the door. Grant stood on the porch, his jacket unzipped against the morning chill, looking tired and noticeably irritated. He did not step inside. "Our data plan just shut off, Mom," he said, holding his device in his hand. "Camille's vendor calls are dropping. Why did you disconnect the family plan without warning us?" "That account was established when you were in graduate school." "Grant," I said, evenly leaning against the doorframe, "you have been fully employed for over a decade. It is entirely appropriate for you to manage your own household communications. This is petty," he snapped, running a hand through his hair. "You're doing this because Camille set a boundary about the patio furniture. You're trying to punish us right before Thanksgiving." I looked at my son, seeing the defensive posture he always adopted when forced to confront his own dependency. "A boundary is choosing how you spend your own resources, Grant. An ultimatum is demanding $3,000 from your mother under the threat of exclusion. I did not disconnect you out of malice. I simply stopped carrying expenses that belong to an independent adult." He stood on the porch, clearly waiting for me to backpedal and offer a check to smooth over the tension. When I remained silent, he took a step back down the porch stairs. Camille was right, he said bitterly. You really are willing to spend the holidays completely alone just to prove a point. I am never alone when I have my self-respect. I replied quietly and gently closed the door. On Monday morning, 3 days before Thanksgiving, I drove to the county animal shelter where I had volunteered occasionally during the summer. The volunteer coordinator, a retired nurse named Marcus, was organizing the holiday shift schedule on a whiteboard in the lobby. Loretta, what brings you by on a holiday week? Marcus asked, setting down his dry erase marker. I have open availability this Thursday, I said. Put me down for the morning feeding shift and the afternoon medical prep. Marcus smiled with genuine relief. That takes a huge load off our staff. Most people cancel on major holidays to attend family dinners. My schedule cleared up, I replied cheerfully. I would much rather spend the day doing something genuinely useful. After finalizing my volunteer shift, I stopped by the local greenhouse and purchased several pots of winter rosemary and silver birch branches. When I returned home, I decorated my porch and mantel not for an audience of critical in-laws, but for my own quiet enjoyment. The house smelled of pine needles, cedar wood, and fresh coffee. That afternoon, Camille posted a video update on her public social media page. She was standing in her newly arranged living room showcasing designer place settings and lamenting the difficult choices families must make when relatives refuse to support collective traditions. Several of her acquaintances left comments praising her strength for maintaining standards. I did not feel angry reading her words. In fact, the performance confirmed everything I had come to realize over the past week. Camille's entire world was built on curated perceptions, and she needed a villain to explain why her budget was falling short. I resolved not to give her the satisfaction of a private argument or a public plea for reconciliation. My silence was my most effective defense. On Wednesday afternoon, the day before Thanksgiving, a silver SUV pulled abruptly into my driveway. Camille stepped out carrying an oversized wicker basket lined with red gingham fabric. She walked up the front path with a rehearsed smile that did not reach her eyes, knocking twice before turning the brass handle herself. I met her in the foyer before she could step further into the hallway. Loretta, I brought you some fresh rolls and spiced butter, she said, holding out the basket as if presenting an act of extraordinary charity. We know how quiet this house gets on holidays. Grant mentioned you were upset about the phone bill, so I wanted to extend an olive branch. I kept my hands resting calmly at my sides, refusing to take the basket. What do you actually need, Camille? Her smile stiffened slightly, her professional composure cracking around the edges. The rental company for the dining canopy refuses to deliver without a certified deposit, and Grant's credit card has a temporary hold because of the new utility setups. We just need a short-term bridge loan of $1,500. If you write the check today, your seat at the head of the table is waiting for you tomorrow. She genuinely believed that 72 hours of isolation had broken my resolve. She assumed the threat of spending Thanksgiving alone would make me grateful to buy my way back into her favor at a 50% discount. My answer has not changed since Tuesday, I said calmly, looking her directly in the eye. My presence at a family table is not an item for sale, and neither is my savings. Please take your basket and leave. Camille's face flushed with genuine fury. You will regret this when Grant stops bringing Maya to visit you entirely, she hissed before turning on her heel and slamming the door. Thanksgiving morning arrived crisp and bright, with a thin layer of frost dusting the front lawn. At 7 o'clock, I put on my warm wool coat and sturdy boots, grabbed my travel mug of tea, and drove across town to the shelter. For 4 hours, Marcus and I cleaned kennels, prepared special holiday meals for the rescue dogs, and walked the older animals around the fenced paddock. There was no posturing, no anxiety over table runners, and no calculated balance sheets. The work was honest, physically demanding, and deeply satisfying. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Grant. I stepped into the shelter's break room and answered. In the background, I could hear loud chatter classical music and Camille's tense voice directing someone about the patio heaters. "Mom, where are you?" Grant asked, his voice strained and out of breath. "We sent a driver to your house to pick you up." Camille decided to waive the fee. "We have 30 people arriving in an hour, and none of the warming trays are working because the circuit tripped. You know where the spare fuses are in our basement." He was not calling out of love or holiday warmth. He was calling because his elaborate stage set was malfunctioning, and he needed his reliable problem solver. "I am working a shift at the county animal shelter, Grant," I said clearly. "I am unavailable." "You're at a dog shelter on Thanksgiving?" He asked, his tone shifting from frustration to disbelief. "People are asking why you aren't here. Camille told her parents you were resting, but her mother wants to speak with you." "Tell them the truth," I answered steadily. "Tell them Camille told me I had no seat at your table and I chose to believe her. Do not call me again today, Grant. Handle your own household." I spent Thanksgiving afternoon sharing a potluck meal in the community center annex with Marcus, Evelyn, and 3 local small business owners who had also spent the morning volunteering. We ate roasted chicken warm sourdough and roasted root vegetables while exchanging stories about our careers and neighborhood history. For the first time in 5 years, my holiday was entirely free of emotional landmines. At 6 in the evening, I returned to my quiet, warm house. When I checked my phone, there were 14 missed calls from Grant and 3 urgent voice messages from Camille's mother, Brenda. I called Brenda back directly from my kitchen landline. Brenda was a sensible woman who ran an accounting firm in the next county. We had always treated each other with mutual professional courtesy. "Loretta, thank goodness you called," Brenda said immediately. "Camille told the entire dinner party that you refused to attend because you were unwell, but Grant finally admitted you had an argument over expenses. What on earth happened?" "Camille demanded $3,000 to finance her patio furniture as a condition for my attendance, Brenda." I stated calmly, without exaggeration or anger. When I declined, she told me I had no seat at their table. I simply respected her terms and spent my day volunteering. A heavy silence fell over the line. Brenda let out a slow, embarrassed exhale. "She told us you were having memory issues about family contributions." "I am so sorry, Loretta. I had no idea she was treating you this way." "You do not need to apologize for her actions, Brenda," I replied. "I am only clarifying the facts so there is no misunderstanding." By 10 o'clock that evening, the manufactured story Camille had constructed for her social circle had completely dissolved under the weight of simple, undeniable truth. 2 weeks passed before Grant came to my house, alone on a quiet Sunday afternoon. He sat at the kitchen table, looking noticeably humbled and exhausted. The glossy veneer of their social campaign had worn off, leaving behind the real financial strain of their choices. Camille's parents had a long talk with us, Grant admitted, looking down at his coffee cup. Brenda told Camille that if she ever used family gatherings to extort money again, they would cut off their support entirely. Camille is furious, but she knows she crossed a line. "And where do you stand, Grant?" I asked, quietly sitting across from him. "I let her push you around because it was easier than dealing with her anger." He confessed, his voice heavy with genuine remorse. "I was a coward, Mom. I forgot that protecting my family includes treating my mother with decency. Can we just start over for Christmas?" I looked at my son with clear eyes and an open heart, but with unwavering clarity. "We are not starting over, Grant. We are starting differently." "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means I will no longer fund your lifestyle, cover your incidental costs, or serve as an uncredited sponsor for your events." I explained steadily. "Maya will spend Saturday afternoons here with me baking and reading, because my relationship with my granddaughter is unconditional. but I will not attend holiday dinners at your house until respect is demonstrated consistently through actions not negotiated under pressure. Grant nodded slowly, accepting the terms without dispute. He finished his coffee, thanked me, and walked out to his car with a clearer understanding of his responsibilities. I locked the front door, walked back to my sunlit living room, and sat down with my curriculum notes. My table was peaceful, my home was secure, and my life belonged entirely to me.